Hey, it's Kelly from The Woman Condemned, where we talk about women on death row and female criminals. Today, we're going to talk about Eileen Huber and Robbin Machucca, one half of the Puenta Hills Mall Murderers. They're responsible for killing 5 people in 1991 in California. Eileen, Robbin's brother John Lewis, who Eileen was dating, and Robbin's boyfriend Vincent were the 4 perpetrators in these crimes. They kidnapped people, usually from ATMs or mall parking lots, and murdered them to get their money. They made them go to the ATM, or they would take whatever they had on them, jewelry and whatever was in their car, and killed them. I've done 2 television shows on this topic because I am familiar with Eileen and Robbin and have had some communication with them over the past 7 years. I have a lot of photos and letters and crafts and things they've sent me that I'll show you, and I will let you know what they've said about their crimes and what they've done. These killings were all motivated by greed, as well as John Lewis, Robbin's brother, half-brother. He had a chip on his shoulder from birth, and it's not surprising. This kid was sexually abused. He and his half-sister Robbin Machucca were sexually abused, physically abused, tortured. Some of the sickest stuff that you can hear about that's been done to children was done to these 2 kids throughout their whole life, from birth on. John had such a large chip on his shoulder that he felt the whole world owed him something, the whole world, for what he had endured as a child and for what he was enduring as an adult. He felt that he was always in jail, and he lived the life he did because he had been abused and molested and tortured during his childhood. John is the only one of the 4 perpetrators to get a death sentence. All others received life without parole. Eileen Huber was 21 at the time of the crimes and the youngest of all 4 perpetrators. Robbin was 27 at the time. Robbin and Eileen aided in the murders of Jose Avina, 22 years old, Augustine Ramirez, 53 years old, Willie Sams, 40 years old, Elizabeth Nisbet, 49 years old, and Shirley Denogian, 56 years old. Jose Avina was shot on July 5, 1991. This was in Monrovia, California. And as Jose drove under the red light, John urged Eileen to ram the back of his truck with her car. John then jumped out, ran to Jose's truck, yanked him out, and shot him. Eileen followed behind. They abandoned the truck and stole the stereo out of it. The weird thing about all this is Eileen was a good kid. She grew up in a good home. She had a steady father that was there for her all the time, although her mother had disappeared. But she was raised with a father that cared about her. And sometimes she made good grades. She was an excellent student. She was a good kid. She never got in any trouble. Somewhere around high school, they moved. And they moved to a not as good part of town. And when they moved into West Covina area, that's when she made friends with Robbin and John. And John Lewis was such a bad guy. Like, he was just a bad boy. And she had never been around that kind of thing, so she loved it. She loved being around him. Everything that he did, she wanted to do. She knew it was wrong, but she wanted to please him and her new crowd that she was in. So much so that she arranged for John and Vincent to come in and rob her father while he was out of town. She knew that he had a lot of guns in the house and they needed them after the Jose Avila robbery and murder, that all they wanted to do was more and more and more. So she set it up to where her father would be out of town. John and Vincent could come in and steal all the guns in the house. Victim Elizabeth Nisbet was sitting in her car at Puenta Hills Mall waiting for her husband when John Lewis kidnapped her, drove her away, murdered her, and stole her ring, which he gave to Eileen as an engagement ring. 3 days later, all 4 perpetrators were involved in the kidnapping and murder of Shirley Denogian. They spotted her walking out of the mall. John and Vincent attacked her while she was attempting to get in her car. They forced their way into the car with her and forced her to give them her bank code and card. Robbin and Eileen were riding behind them in another car. They caught up and got the cards and code and began using the ATM cards. John Lewis shot Shirley in the head on the side of the road. Augustine Ramirez was killed after he was closing down the restaurant that he owned, the Magic Mushroom. They shot him and stole his wallet. They kidnapped Willie Sams, shot him, and threw him in a dumpster. There was little to no evidence to help police catch these people at first, but eventually someone recognized Eileen's photo as she tried to use an ATM. It was on the ATM security camera. And then the photos were passed around, and they were recognized as local people from the area. All 4 of them were in the apartment one night, boozing it up, having a big time, when Eileen decided to leave and go get fast food for the crew. And as soon as she left the apartment, the police nabbed her outside and took her to police headquarters, where they questioned her. The rest of the crew didn't even know what was going on. They thought she was still gone looking for fast food. By the time they figured out what was going on, Eileen had already spoken to the police. She was she had the shortest record. She'd never been in any trouble. She was the most likely to cooperate, which she did. By the end of the story, John Lewis received death penalty. Vincent, Robbin, and Eileen all got life without parole. Vincent and Robbin were both abused as children, as was John, and that led to a lot of the reason why they weren't given death penalty. But John was, although he had suffered abuse, but he was just so callous and uncaring and knew exactly what he was doing, and he planned each and every one, and it was only for greed, although he did state that he wanted everyone to pay for the pain that he was living through at that time and throughout his life. These people have been in prison for more than 20 years now. The families still feel the pain of the loss of their loved ones. And that's what I was wondering about when I first contacted Eileen about 8 or 9 years ago, maybe 10 years ago. I wrote to her because I had seen a special on YouTube, an old special from the news about what had happened. And I knew that these people were still, missing their loved ones still. And so I asked her, did she ever think about that? And that started a 10-year correspondence with her, and then she introduced me to Robbin. And since then, I've learned a lot about these women and the crimes they committed, as well as the victims and the victims' families, what they have been through. Eileen, when I first met her, she was very remorseful. She spent most of her day, she didn't work when I met her, but she dedicated her time to anything charitable that the prison would allow her to do. She's very interested in helping younger women who are in the same shape that she was in make better decisions and think further ahead of themselves than just the 2 or 3 steps that she was thinking. I had met Charles Moissant of Silver Phoenix Productions at a book signing I did in Illinois a few years ago, and he is interested in doing the artwork for Eileen to write the text for a comic book that will perhaps be given to young women in group homes and first sign of trouble in their lives. I've also spoken to group home girls about Eileen and Robbin and showed their life story, and this was at her request, hoping that somebody would hear what happened to her and what she did and take another route. Eileen has been an exemplary prisoner. She is never in trouble. She mentors younger women. She knows that she deserves to be where she is, and she will tell you that quick. She makes no excuses for what she's done, and she believes that she belongs where she is. Would she like to get out? Of course she would. Would she be a decent person upon release? I believe so. Her work now, her life now is dedicated to trying to make amends for what she's done. Eileen's life now is dedicated to doing whatever she can do to make the world a better place. And I think that's exactly what we ask our inmates to do with their time. Here's some things that she has sent to me. Here's a photo. Me, my dad, and my brother. Please do what you want with these. I have the originals. Keep them, give them away, whatever you like. And that was quite a while ago. This is many years ago, when not too long after her arrival in prison. This was in 2011. I do not know the other girl's last name, although this is Eileen. And the other younger girl's name is Michelle. I don't know her last name, but she was another inmate that Eileen adopted and took care of while she was there in the prison, and made sure that she got out and did not come back in. Around 2 years after I had began correspondence with Eileen, she introduced me to Robbin. At first, Robbin seemed to me to be bitter. I think I met her in 2013, I think. And in her first conversation with me, she said, I don't want to talk about what I've done. It's embarrassing, it's horrible, and it is what it is. It's done over, and I can't do anything about it now. She wasn't involved in any classes or courses. She wasn't trying to work with charities. She wasn't volunteering her time. She was simply existing. And the first year or so, I knew her, even though it was a good 10 years that she'd been in prison. She just didn't seem to be very accepting of her punishment. We went about a year without speaking, kind of because of that, because I felt that while she never asked me for anything, I just didn't feel like I can't explain it. I just didn't feel like she was really, like she cared, or she was trying to make anything better out of the disaster that she had put out into the world. But about a year and a half, maybe 2 years later, she sent me another letter. And it seemed that things had really changed for her. She was volunteering her time. She was involving herself in constructive programs. She was not getting in trouble. She was changing her life. And the past 2 years or so, I hear a lot of good things coming from her. And that's what we want. That's the point of her being there. Another thing I have from Eileen is origami. She is a origami freak. She loves it. I sent her some paper once, and she sends me origami whatnots. Pretty cool, huh? Swan. Pretty neat. That's it. Thank you for tuning in. These videos don't go wide on YouTube. Nobody just browsing YouTube sees these things. That most of my viewers are longtime blog readers, and they tune in to watch these little silly videos so I can show you guys pictures and crafts and stuff. So I really appreciate you tuning in. Oh, I've got a self-portrait that Eileen drew somewhere. I'll have to show that on another video. I gotta find it. Everybody's okay during this quarantine, and hang in there, guys. We got this.